Hey, what's going on, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be ranking and grading every single pick that happened in the first round of the 2023 NFL Draft. Now, this is part one. I'm going to be going through 31 through 16, and in the next video, which is part two, I'm going to be going over 15 through 1, which is coming out very soon. Starting off with the worst pick that I had in the first round of the 2023 NFL Draft, I'm going to have to go with Felix Anudike-Uzomah. I had him as my 13th ranked edge rusher in the draft class. I don't think he's as technically sound as some people do. He's fine as an edge rusher. I know that he made a few Big 12s, and he had 19 and a half sacks over the past 2 seasons. However, I think he's still pretty raw, and I don't think he's as technically sound and is as good as a pass rusher as maybe some other guys that didn't go in front of him, like Keion White maybe. But overall, he was my 13th edge rusher. I didn't have him on my top 50 at all. It was a homer pick, though. He did go to Kansas State, as they are the Kansas City Chiefs that picked him. But this is, I think, it doesn't mean he's a bad player, but it is my lowest rank in my rankings. I'm going to have Emmanuel Forbes coming in at 30. Look, Emmanuel Forbes is 166 pounds. And he went above my favorite cornerback in the draft class, which was Christian Gonzalez. He was also not on my top 50. This was another guy who I had some pretty big question marks on. I know he's got great ball speed or ball skills. He's got those long arms. He's got some good speed. But, I mean, at 166 pounds, he might get bodied a lot. I think in the NFL, he will get those interceptions, blah, blah, blah. But I think that there were way better cornerbacks that should have gone above him, and Christian Gonzalez literally went at the pick right after him. And for the Commanders, they kind of needed a bigger X or a receiver, that cornerback who could guard those X receivers, especially in the NFC East, where you now have AJ Brown. So I think this was a miss for the Commanders, who could have gone with Christian Gonzalez or Joey Porter Jr. or Deontay Banks. It always sucks to see your own team kind of have a miss in the draft, and I think that Will McDonald was a very good example of one of those. He was my 7th edge rusher. He came in around 47th on my top 10. Really slight edge rusher at 239 pounds. However, he's got probably the best bend in the draft. He's got some good speed. He's got some good pass rush moves, but the Jets didn't really need edge rusher. They still have a ton on the roster. They drafted Michael Clemens last year. They drafted Quentin Johnston also in the first round last year. They still got Bryce Huff. They've got a lot of edge rushers over at the Jet system, and I think this could have been a primary spot where they could have taken, maybe offensive tackle or gone with one of the best receivers on the board. I think that the pick probably was going to be Broderick Jones, but he was ended up being picked by the Steelers as they jumped the Jets. But I thought that Nolan Smith was a better pick than Will McDonald here. I think that he offers a lot more than possibly Will McDonald does, because he doesn't often when he faces double teams, Will McDonald does not stop the run very well. He really, to me, is a situational pass rusher. That's why I had a early 3rd round grade on him. So a miss for the Jets, in my opinion, and going to have him at 29th. Another year where the Cowboys picked somebody that I don't totally agree with and that I think is an overdraft. Last year it was Tyler Smith. Now it is Mazi Smith. Mazi Smith is I had him at my 5th interior defensive lineman. I think he is a pure run stuffer, and he offers just a little bit of pass rush upside. He was very good last year at Michigan, of course, but in the NFL, I really think he primarily only is a run defender, and I think you could have gotten Mazi Smith even in the 2nd round. I definitely think he could have fell, and you've got you've got 2 players that I think could have been drafted way above him, like Myles Murphy or Bryan Bresee, that probably would have been better for Dallas, in my opinion, that gives them a little bit more versatility. Mazi Smith kind of fits in that nose tackle role, and the Cowboys definitely did need more run stuffing, but I do slightly think that this was an overdraft, going to have him at 28. I didn't really love the interior defensive lineman class outside of Jalen Carter, and another one goes right now, Calijah Kancey to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, I don't hate this much, or I don't dislike this much as Mazi Smith. I think Calijah Kancey kind of fits decently well with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They've got Vita Vea, who can take up 2 blockers, so they can just put Calijah Kancey as a primary pass rusher. However, Kancey does get blown up in the run game. He is a very small interior defensive tackle, but they run a 3-4 over there. He'll play the end. They've got Logan Hall over there. They've got Vita Vea and now Calijah Kancey, but I fear that he is not going to be very good in the run game. I think in the pass game, and he'll offer some good stuff as a pass rusher, but I think he'll only thrive in the NFL exclusively as one, unless he, of course, bulks up and gets stronger in the run game. Going to have him at 27. Another guy that was lower on my big board as well. Man, I really hate doing this, but I'm going to have Jahmyr Gibbs coming in at 26. I love Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he is a phenomenal running back. I think he is extremely explosive. He's really fast. He ran a 4.36 at the combine. He's a phenomenal pass catcher who's got really good routes. He is also he's a good route runner. He's got good hands. He's explosive in the run game. He hits holes pretty well. He's got good vision. However, you're drafting a 199-pound running back, 5'9", at 12th overall. That is really high for a guy that I definitely think could have been available even at your next pick, and definitely available outside of the top 20. I mean, we don't really see 199-pound running backs go this high anymore, but I definitely really like Jahmyr Gibbs. He needs to add bulk at the NFL level. He could have versatility in the slot, and also he's super explosive in the run game. And I think that Detroit really did need a running back. They lost Jamal Williams. DeAndre Swift isn't that great, overrated due to fantasy, but I have Jahmyr Gibbs coming in at 26 because I think it's extremely risky to not only take a running back at 12 due to their position of value, but take a small 199-pound running back at that position. With all that said, I really like Jahmyr Gibbs, though. I think Quentin Johnston is a fine player. However, I don't love the team that he went to. I think that the Chargers in this draft really needed to add explosiveness, and they needed to add dynamic playmakers to that offense. Keenan Allen is just getting older. Mike Williams really only has one specialty, which is jump balls, and really has a limited route tree. And you're adding another guy who has a limited route tree, who is just another deep threat, and who also isn't the greatest at contested catches. He only converted 38% of his contested catches, which was less than Tank Dell, who was 165 pounds. Partially, I think that is due to Max Duggan at TCU not putting the ball where it really needed to be. But I had some red flags with him at the combine. He was a 6'4", 220 guy, listed on ESPN at TCU. He dropped an inch and a half to 6'2.5" to 208 pounds. Didn't run as fast either. Didn't perform that great in the agility tests, but did have that explosive traits. And I think he's going to be a good receiver. I think he'll be a solid receiver, but that room in Los Angeles is not very dynamic, and I think it's still going to be hard for Justin Herbert to find guys open, because Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, and now Quentin Johnston are all guys who now no longer thrive in getting open. But we'll have to see with Quentin Johnston, with Justin Herbert, because Herbert's a great quarterback, and Quentin Johnston's a good receiver who can definitely get deep and has great after the catch ability with his speed. He can get to 22 miles per hour. We'll have to see, though, but I have him coming in at 25. I think that this was a very creative pick, I'll say, for Detroit. I actually do not hate this pick at all. I like this pick. I think that Jack Campbell is a very good linebacker. I had him as my linebacker 2 in this class. I had Drew Sanders slightly over him. I think he's going to be a very good strong side linebacker. He's really big at 6'5", 249 pounds. He is athletic. He had a 9.9 on RAS. He has 4.65 speed. He is good in zone. He's a downhill run stopper. I think he has a ton of versatility, and he can fit into that Mike. He can fit into the strong side linebacker role. However, I definitely do think you overdrafted Jack Campbell, who I definitely think was or could have been available in the second round. But I'm not mad at the pick. If you like Jack Campbell and Jack Campbell fits your system and you think he's going to work out in the NFL and works out in your system, totally pick him. I think linebacker was a need for Detroit, but at the 18th overall pick, yes, it is a weak draft class. I think you could have maybe gone a different avenue with cornerback and then pick Jack Campbell in the early second. So, I don't necessarily hate the player at all. I just think it, was an overdraft for both what ESPN thinks. They had him 58th overall. I had him 43rd overall, and you took him 18th. But I do not hate the player at all. This is a very heartwarming pick for me. Bryan Bresee's story is one of a ton of adversity. He had a torn shoulder last year. He came off of an ACL in 2021. He battled with the death of a family member, which was his sister, back in 2021 as well, I'm pretty sure, and did not have a ton of production due to those injuries and adversity at Clemson. But this is a former number one overall player. He was the number one player coming out of high school in 2020, I'm pretty sure. But he is another guy who is athletic, came into the combine, performed really well, looked healthy at the combine at least. And I thought he did have a chance to go at the Saints at 29, as they lost quite a bit of defensive lineman help with Marcus Davenport, with Sky Tuttle. But he's coming in at 23 for me. I think this is a good pick. I think it's a solid pick. But I do have players, of course, above him. I have Jordan Addison coming in at 22 for me. For Minnesota, I think this was a good pick to address that wide receiver position. They lost Adam Thielen this year, and they needed that slot receiver. Jordan Addison is going to come in and probably play that slot role exclusively. Now, of course, I have a massive red flag with him, is that he's 173 pounds, red flag. He doesn't play press well at all. However, and he also isn't super athletic. He is another 4'5" guy, 4'9" official, and he doesn't play well against more physical receivers, but he has good separation. He had a phenomenal year at Pittsburgh. He had another good year at USC. He played with two NFL quarterbacks, and he's also joining a room with Justin Jefferson. That's going to take a lot of the heat off of him in the slot, but I think there is such a ceiling on him to where I can't put him any higher than where he is. I even debated putting him under Bryan Bresee for the slot, just because the fact that he's a smaller receiver. He's not going to be an 1,000-yard guy right away. I don't think he's going to get too much attention out of the slot next year. So we might see him open on a few plays. But overall, I think that there is a certain ceiling that he's going to reach as somebody of his stature and his ability. I have Peter Skoronski coming in at 21. Now, some of you may be questioning heavily why I have Peter Skoronski so low. Well, I don't know where he's necessarily going to play at Tennessee. Is he going to play at left tackle? Is he going to play at right tackle? Is he going to slide into guard? And if you slid him into guard, you picked him at 11. But I think he's probably going to end up playing left tackle. And I hope to God he plays well, because he might have to bump into guard later years. His arm length and his wingspan is a massive red flag for me. He had a 79.5-inch wingspan, 32 and a quarter inch arms. Those are within the 8th and the 4th percentile of all offensive tackles, which is a red flag for me. However, if you move him to guard, all of those question marks completely go away. But speaking about his actual play, he's probably the most technically sound offensive tackle in this class. He's really good in the run game. But I do have some question marks about him in the pass game. You watch the game versus Lukas Van Ness or Iowa. He got blown off the line a few times when offensive tackles or when lengthy edge rushers get their hands within his frame early. He completely will lose the rep. But technically sound, Tennessee Titans definitely needed an offensive tackle. So I'm not horribly mad at this pick. I just wonder where he's exactly going to play and thrive. So I'm going to have him coming in at 21. I have Myles Murphy coming in at my 20th ranking. Going to have him as a B+. Like Myles Murphy a bit. He's 6'5", 268, and he's another pass rusher that has really good length. He reminds me a lot of Trayvon Walker last year. Good run defender with pass rushing upside. He uses a good bull rush because of his long arms. However, sometimes I think he gets led astray by stronger offensive tackles, and that could potentially allow a hole, but that length makes up for it a little bit. Is inconsistent, and he doesn't have that great array of pass rush moves. But for the Bengals, he'll probably move in, or he'll bounce around the 3-tech and the 3-tech, or the 3-tech and the 5-tech. And overall, it's a move that makes sense. I would have kind of liked the Bengals to either pick maybe a cornerback, maybe because Joey Porter Jr. was available, maybe even offensive tackle with DeJuan Jones. But this is a overall solid pick for the Bengals, and I can understand why they selected him. So now we're getting to the point of the video where these are solid picks. I'm not going to have too much to complain about. These weren't bad picks. These are good players that went to teams that made sense, and they were drafted at a correct or, understandable spot in the draft. Lukas Van Ness is somebody that I believed would go within the range that he did, or 13 to like around 18. Lukas Van Ness, 6'5", 272. Pretty good edge rusher. He's a great combination of size and speed. He's got a good bull rush. He's got long hands. He's got good power at the point of attack. However, another guy with not a great array of pass rush moves, doesn't have great bend, but he's solid, and I don't know exactly where he's going to play for the Packers. I assume he's going to be a 4-3 defensive end, probably, because they have Rashawn Gary, they have Preston Smith, who are both outside linebackers, who are solely outside linebackers. So he'll probably get bumped in to a 3-4 defensive end, and that will definitely limit his statistics, and that's why this might seem like an overdraft. However, I do have him coming in at 19. I do think he's a good, solid player. I have Paris Johnson Jr. coming in at 18. I did think this was an overdraft, but I'm not too mad about it because offensive tackle is one of the premier positions in the NFL draft. And of course, Arizona definitely needed to address this position with DJ Humphries probably being opted out in 2024. Paris Johnson is a premier left tackle, of course, 6'6", 315. He's got great length. He has good athleticism. However, sometimes I think that he allows edges to get into his frame a little too often for someone of his length, and I think he has been slightly overrated during this draft process. I don't think this is as good as a tackle class as a lot of people do, but his footwork is good. His technique is good. Probably still needs to get improved. But overall, at the 6th overall pick, it's still a bit of a reach. For me, I had him in around the 20s in my top 50. They had him 12th. They also said it was an overdraft. However, if you can develop him, he'll probably be a super solid tackle for quite a long time. But I do have him coming in at 18, and an overall grade, I have him as a B+. Now, some of you may be thinking right now, oh, he's an idiot. He's got CJ Stroud at the 17th position in the draft. Well, he was drafted at 2. I had him as a late first-round grade. I know a lot of people that still have question marks about CJ Stroud. My personal question marks are that he isn't great at dealing with pressure in the pocket. Sometimes he'll do something crazy like step back and throw off his back foot. Sometimes he won't step up when he needs to. However, CJ Stroud is a great thrower of the football, but I think his ceiling is ultimately capped. My player comp is similar to Jared Goff. They have their player comp as Dak Prescott, which I also similarly have. I think that his ceiling is right around there. He's going to have the numbers, 30-plus touchdowns, 400-plus yards, a good QBR, good passer rating. However, I don't think CJ Stroud necessarily has that ability to bring that team to the championship. What did he do in college? He had all of these gaudy wide receivers, offensive tackles, Paris Johnson Jr., 6th overall pick, JSN, Marvin Harrison, Emeka Egbuka, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson. That's 5 first-round wide receivers. And is it the fault of Ryan Day? Is it CJ Stroud's fault? We don't know. However, not being able to reach that ultimate goal when you have such a good offense. And I do think he is slightly limited in his potential. Also, massive red flag with his S2 cognitive test where he tested in the 18th percentile. I still have those question marks that are unchecked with CJ Stroud, so I do have him coming in at 17. However, for the Houston Texans, I still think that this is a good pick. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a good pick. They got their quarterback of the future. Now it is time to build around him. I think that they should definitely address wide receiver in round 2 because we have never seen CJ Stroud with a degraded supporting cast system. Even though that Houston definitely has a good offensive line and they've definitely built that up. What is the receiving core? And then the last player that I'm going to be highlighting in this video, of course, part 1, is going to be Jaxon Smith-Njigba going at 20th overall to the Seattle Seahawks. Have him coming in at 16. Like this pick for the Seattle Seahawks, they're going to get their slot guy. They have Tyler Lockett at the Y. They have DK Metcalf at the X. And now they have Jaxon Smith-Njigba at the slot. So you've got a really good receiving core for Geno Smith. But the only question mark that I have is, who's blocking? Who is defending the run for Seattle? I think that with their 2 picks that they have, I still have some question marks about their biggest needs in the draft that definitely should be addressed in the second round. But speaking about Jaxon Smith-Njigba, fluid route runner. He's good at the catch point. He had a phenomenal 2021 season with 1,600 yards, outproduced 2 NFL wide receivers in Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. And he's got great body control, and he's good at working at defenders' leverages. Like the pick for Seattle, however, he's definitely not going to get those gaudy numbers. We probably won't see him get 1,000 yards until Lockett probably retires. But it's a very good safety valve or safety option for that Seattle offense. And I really do really like Seattle for next year. I think they definitely have a really solid playoff roster as they now have 3 really good receivers. They've got Kenneth Walker and 3 really good tight ends as well, with Cody Parkinson, Noah Fant, and then Will Dissly. But overall, going to have this as a good pick, and I have Jaxon Smith-Njigba as a B+. But that's going to do it for this video. Let me know your thoughts about my rankings and my grades. Let me know some of the players that you really liked in the draft class. Let me know some players that you thought were overdrafted or that you really didn't like going in the first round. But make sure you tune into part 2 as it's coming out very soon, where I cover the 15 through my best rankings in the 2023 NFL draft class. I'll see you guys in the next video.